Hi everybody, it's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
And I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin. And today our guests are Glenn-bogue and Sheldon Bird. And I think more Mad Painter, Thomas Becker, trying to get everybody on. So we're going to have Sasha talk a little bit while we gather the troops. Go ahead,
Here
Sasha. Oh, hi. Is this Sheldon or who's this?
This is Glenn.
Oh, it's Glenn. Okay, because we have Glenn and Sheldon. Okay, go ahead and talk, Sasha.
Okay, yeah. The phone's ringing, Janet. Okay, so hello, this is Dr. Sasha. And let the sound of the phone take you deeper into the process that we're about to experience. Deeper and deeper now. That's it. I would like you to realize that inside each one of us,
I'm sorry, the person you were
fractal of the person we were talking to. And when you hear those words, you can go even deeper to feel that inside you and inside every molecule of the universe, there's a fractal, a miniature of everything else in the universe. It's all there. It's all there. And what's really there in a powerful way are the archetypes, like you see in the Weight Deck of Tarot. Well, one of the ones I want you to access right now to get ready for this talk by our guests is to let yourself access your fractal of Jesus, whatever Jesus it means to you, and let yourself identify with, if you were inside that being, however you conceive Jesus, and just were to let that fractal take you over for a minute, just notice what your existence is like, what you want, what you need, what's your message to humanity, and especially what's your message to the person that's having this visualization right now.
Okay, so Glenn, hi, welcome to the show. I think we're trying to get the other party. Michael Lee Hill is not able to make it. He's under the weather. Are you there, Glenn?
I'm here.
Hi. Okay, sorry. And we have Sheldon Bird, who is the modern incarnation of A.R. Borden. And he's going to come and share his information. And I'm going to text him and see if I can get him to call into the show. And go ahead. Sasha, you direct that. I can't talk and text at the same time.
Hey, well, we want to really know, you're the scholar that's really put so much of this stuff together. What's the connection between Enki, from the Anunnaki, and Jesus, who is obviously a being that has here to say come from love and all kinds of wonderful things. And so you can ask, what's the connection? And I got to say, Glenn, one of the things that really attracted me to your work is how you integrated the opening of the chakras in individual people and using the woman as a way to contact the spiritual, and how that's part of the ancient practice. And it really ties into the sacred wedding that you're going to tell us about. So let's hear it. The story of Jesus, the way you've researched it.
Right. Before you begin, I just want to say this is the part that people don't really understand. And when I heard you break it down and explain it, I went, oh, this is like the missing thread, the missing piece. So go ahead and begin, and I'm going to see what I can do about getting our other guest on. Okay, take it away.
Okay, my name is Glenn-bogue. I'm both an Olympian, and I'm a master's degree in history, and I'm a lawyer here in Toronto. I began my journey about 20 years ago with the Catholic Church that kicked me out. In my divorce, and what really surprised me was the fact that the church itself was not following its own Catholic catechism, that there is no divorce in the Catholic Church. It's the 1993 Catechism of John Paul II, and yet none of the monsignors and priests in my parish and churches where I was for 40 years would honor that and back up and protect my family from this kind of a scourge. So I began to wonder what else the church was hiding then. And just before the Da Vinci Code came out, I was wondering about the beloved disciple in the Gospel of John. And the fact in John, if you look at your Bibles, John 5:45 says that Jesus, when he says in his own words, I will not judge anyone. And yet the Catholic Church, every Sunday, the Catholics, 1 billion of them, repeat the fact that Jesus will come to judge the living and the dead.
Wow.
In John 5:45, he goes on to say, I won't judge you. The one who judged you was Moses. My hair stood up on my head, and I said, I don't know anything about Moses other than Charlton Heston running around in a loincloth on television. And so much of our culture has gone that way, even for 2,000 years before we had, modern electronics, that the only source of information was the Catholic Church. And when you begin to break down the Da Vinci Code and look at what Mrs. Brown was researching, because she was really the key behind Dan Brown's work, there are about 6 symbols in that book that never made it to the movie with Tom Hanks. And when you look at the Magdalene, we know nothing about her. And that's really, Janet, the really part where is the hardest for my work, because you'd swear that people rode in on the bus this morning to work with the Magdalene, in the back row or something. Like, we know nothing about this woman. We know that the Magdalene Tower, she's related with the tower, but Magdala was not on the map at the time. It had a different name. And she's pointing to Jerusalem, to Egypt, to Bethlehem, Egypt, where they came from. And then when you look at the 4 Gospels and you break them out, and it's now understood that the main founding Gospel is John or Mark, one of the two, which is the original one, but they don't have a nativity scene. And right there is the key of whether the nativity scene was added later. So like Sitchin, when he looked at the Nephilim as a young student in school and wouldn't let his teacher go past the Nephilim in chapter 6 of Genesis, he stayed on that topic. I stayed in this, and I said, well, Sitchin said, well, what if the Nephilim means this? And he began to follow that along. And I began to follow on the fact that maybe Jesus was not born in Jerusalem and maybe came from Bethlehem, Egypt. So if so many things they were talking about were Egyptian, raising the dead is not in Jewish culture. It's an Egyptian principle. Mm-hmm. So once I found out that the goddess Isis has a temple in Egypt, and so I began to figure out that there was a connection stronger for Jesus and Mary Magdalene in the Egyptian world. So it's like saying if you came from Toledo and you spoke Spanish, you wouldn't think you came from Toledo, Ohio. You would know they came from Toledo, Spain. And so if they're doing Egyptian things, clearly he's coming from Bethlehem, Egypt, and not the standard thing of the cattle and the manger and the whole thing. So from that, I began to go back. Yeah.
I just had a quick question. Remember where you are, Bethlehem, Egypt, in your thought. But, what was it? Okay, you were talking about John and Mark. They don't have a nativity scene. They don't have, you're saying they don't have the birth in at all?
Correct.
Or they have it different?
No. They start with, Jesus appears in the River Jordan with his dove, and the dove was always hidden to Magdalene. But that dove became transmuted by the church to be the one that the dove came down and landed on Jesus' head, and the voice came from heaven and said, "This is my son in whom I have great faith," and etc. And right there you see the female being cut out of the picture. The same way that we know the lineage of Adam and Eve, we know the sons that came out of Eve. What, did they have no daughters ever? The whole female line is missing.
Yeah, just a bunch of boys. So when we go, I just want to finish the train of thought with there's no nativity. So where do we get the nativity from? The whole nativity concept, is that Matthew and Luke?
Matthew and Luke are added later, and that's where you get this Immaculate Conception story coming up. But the whole cattle and manger came up more in the 14th century. St. Francis of Assisi is involved with that whole more rural, rustic type setting that would appeal to everybody, and who could argue with this? So
we see layers. There's layers of tweaking that you're unpeeling here.
Well, there's only one source of truth. The one source of truth of Sasha for the whole 1,400 years after this 0 point was the Catholic Church was the only one who was allowed to pontificate on this subject. There was no critical thinking done at all. So when you begin to look at Jesus' comments, he never called Virgin Mary mother once except at the foot of the cross.
Wow.
He calls her woman the whole time.
Hold the one more thing, piece of thread, and we'll go on. I just wanted to catch these pieces of thread. So I read a book called The Lost Books of the Bible. And have you ever read that? Okay.
I've heard of it.
The story that I was trying to repurchase it because I remember this years ago.
I know where it is.
Well, if we have a version of it, I don't know, it wasn't quite the same. But it had a story that Mother Mary was a miracle type of thing, born to an older couple that were unable to have children. And so we have her being a magical child, and she's given to the convent or the monastery, whatever they called it back then. She's given to the Essenes, is what I think. And she is, surrounded by angels. We have angels, messengers. So she's a special child selected. And then when she, of course, becomes an adult, she gets selected again. And then there is a story in the Lost Books of the Bible of a nativity scene where they have people touching the infant's cloth, and even like his urine and stuff, it's all magical qualities, and people are healed. So there's something. So that I wondered. It was supposed to be written by. Part of this was supposed to be written by Mary herself. So I just wondered if you ever examined that information and incorporated that into your research and what you thought of it.
No, I just left. I kind of stayed with the whole concept that he's not really regarding Virgin Mary as his mother. So I had to put that one on neutral. If he's calling her a woman, that's more akin to being his wife or concubine of some time. And then Margaret Starbird, who did such a great job with her books on Women with the Alabaster Jar, etc. She's really one of the best Magdalene scholars in the world. She is I think she's Catholic, most of her life. But she did the same thing I did. She put that faith aside and began to really look what was going on there. And she notices that the Magdalene is mentioned first, always,
Right.
ahead of this other woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you have that scenario going, where there's no virgin birth going on here, there's this couple appearing in the River Jordan, and then you start going backwards in time, back to Moses, which is what we're asked to do in the Gospel of John. The one who judged you was Moses and his Godhead, Yahweh. And you go back to Abraham, and then you realize that Abraham's father, Terah, worshipped Anunnaki Godhead. But until we have Anunnaki Godhead, it looks like some kind of broken Hebrew message there of who his father and who gives a crap who the father of Abraham worshipped, because now we have the truth of the one true God bringing this guy out of, who's not Jewish or Arab. He's just this guy coming out of ancient Persia, and is lured, actually bribed with land and heritage. And people don't, if you don't know the ancient history there, you would know, well, he's broken the first commandment, the fifth commandment, to honor thy mother and thy father. Never mind all that. Take you away from them. Come over here to Jerusalem. So then you begin to wonder, why is Jerusalem so holy? And if you can get past the whole fight going on right now on Temple Mount, where I think it's true that 8 hours a day belongs to the Muslims, and 8 hours a day belongs to the Jews, and 8 hours a day belongs to the Christians. And you begin to wonder what's going on in Temple. Why Jerusalem? But the ancient name of Jerusalem is Ariel, A-R-I-E-L. And Ariel in Margaret Starbird's work, that I mentioned earlier, the one with the alabaster jar, meant she will come there dressed as a bride. So now when you look at the Gospel of John, now in the Gospel of John, you've got this wedding at Cana. And in the later Gospels, they point to the Galilee. They're saying he didn't come from Bethlehem, this Jesus character. He came from over there near water's edge in Galilee. So he's always near the water. He appears in the River Jordan. And now he's at this wedding where, of course, the water was turned into wine. And the very best wine. So according to, I think it's Lawrence Gardner, that's reserved for the bridegroom. Presenting of the wine, it's reserved for the bridegroom. So this is where you go to Dan Brown, and it was actually a marriage there between he and Magdalene. The Magdalene had his baby, and then you begin running through that whole Knights Templar argument of the offspring, and the Knights Templar were guarding the offspring of Jesus, Mary Magdalene. But that whole thing has fizzled now. That lasted for about a year or two after 2000, when Da Vinci Code came out. And they kind of crushed it with the movie. Ron Howard turned it into a car chase scene. Flowers. And so completely misses the point of these sacred symbols. I started that way because we usually don't start that way. We usually start from the Sumerian text and come forward. But, when women get into the Magdalene and the goddess imagery, there's still some kind of fog goes over their head, and now they're into the goddess worship thing going on. What did the Magdalene know? And I go back to my opening statement in the show, was that we don't know anything about this woman, other than that she's behind home plate, she's at midfield, she's there doing everything. And when you begin to see Jesus' epithets for her, that the Magdalene means she's going to be married. It's not a Hebrew title. It's a Greek royal title. Mary the Magdalene and Jesus Christos are Greek royal titles. So I don't call Dr. Lessin Anthroman. He's an anthropologist. I don't call him that. I call him Anthroman. It's not his name. Andy. That's what he does. So Jesus Christos is the Christ coming out of Greece. And now when you get back to the original text of the Greeks, where, by the way, there is a rift in the Jewish faith, and people don't know this usually. There are Greek Jews and there are Jews from Jerusalem, from Israeli Jews, and they're practicing different principles. Mm-hmm. And so from the Greek world, you get Jesus Christos, and then you begin to get the common thread of this other woman that's with Jesus Christos. And people know her as Athena. And in the book, now we're back about 500 BC, there's a book called The Serious Mystery. It's by Robert Temple. He's a British author. And when he wrote the book, the CIA broke in and stole the manuscript.
Wow.
I'm not sure what the CIA wants with a book about the star system Sirius that was so sacred to the Egyptians. That's a real eye-opener. Fortunately, Mr. Temple kept 2 manuscripts in safety deposit boxes in London, where he knew that they were safe. And in this book, guys, I figure there's this picture of Jesus Christos, and beside him is a little hominid, a little male hominid, and then there's this woman of the tree. And the woman of the tree in that picture has fish scales on her lower half. And that's Athena. Now, when you get to numerology, numerology-wise, the Athene adds up to 243, and the Magdalene adds up to 243. One's got fish scales on her body, which the Greeks never talk about, but it's there in the picture. And so now you've got the Magdalene and the Athene, the fish gods, with the same numerology, and the numerology, of course, being banned by the modern Catholic Church.
Isn't but that numerology symbol? The fish scales is the symbol of Enki, that he's Poseidon.
So here you go. So here are the fish gods coming up. So as you go backwards in time to pick the correct starting point in history, is of course Sumer. And now when we get back there to Sitchin, now we can start the show formally. Once I begin to say we know nothing about Mary Magdalene, so I don't care who taught you, call the show and tell me where you got other information that she was born in Magdala, or that meant I don't know what the hell it is, that she was rich and she was funding. None of that's in there. None of that's in the Bible. So where's it coming from? Story here, story there. Just the fact that they came in the water and they're heading for this royal wedding. And then you get the image of her with the epithet Black Madonna. Now, when you land back in Sumer, and we get Sitchin's work, which Miss Hardy, was supposed to be on the show, but she's got that great book on DNA of the gods and a great job of assembling Sitchin's work and key parts of it in one source if people want to get it, and a good starter book for the Anunnaki Godhead. But now when you get the Black Madonna being featured in the story of Sitchin, of a event that occurred on another planet, and Sitchin said the Nephilim means they came down from the heavens to the earth and fornicated with the daughters of Eve. That's in Genesis 6:4. So if you're Catholic, go get your Bible and it'll say, you ask the question, who caused the great flood? It's the ones who came down from the heavens and married and fornicated with the daughters of Eve. They caused it. Nothing that the humans did. Other than the females took these as their mates. Who knows if the sex was forced on them? Who knows what happened? But that's the story right there. And from that, you get Homo sapiens. Well, actually, Homo sapiens sapiens, because in the story that Sitchin is telling, his immaculate conception occurs in a petri dish, where a scientist of Black Madonna was brought here to the planet, brought to Ethiopia, a lab probably in Ethiopia, a lab over in Tigris-Euphrates. And she's charged with the job of taking the ape ovum and developing it into a little worker couple that can begin to go to the mines to get the gold. That's the story. So as Sitchin said, I just take the story and I apply it to what we see in history. And oddly enough, when you get this term of Black Madonna tied to the original scientist that turned the ovum of the ape into a human being, the Black Madonna is the epithet for Enma, it's the epithet for Isis in Egypt, and it's the epithet for Mary the Magdalene. So now when you say, well, we don't know where Mary Magdalene came from, she just kind of showed up from Egypt, really. People say, well, how can Mary Magdalene and Ninmah be the same person? Well, Sitchin has the answer. Their planet takes 3,500 years to go from Sirius around the Earth. The sun is the second foci of the ellipse it makes. And back it goes to Sirius, and as it goes, its volcanoes with this heavy atmosphere keep the planet warm. And so when that planet was damaged, when it hit our planet, our atmosphere was damaged, the atmosphere was damaged, they needed gold, and they needed a miner to go into the mountains of South Africa and Peru, that's where the gold is from the earth, in greatest quantity, and get the gold for them. Now you begin to see that the Magdalene from 3000 BC to the time of Jesus, that's 1 year for her.
Right.
It's about the time it takes to plan a wedding, isn't it?
Yeah. Takes
And
a long
now
time
we begin
to
to
plan
see.
things.
Now we begin to see that Enki, his nickname was the Son of Man. So for 40 years, I'm in the church, the church pew every Sunday, looking at the story, being told Jesus is the Son of Man. Well, I can't find that anywhere. I can't find a definition what that means. But Sitchin tells us what it is. Man refers to their people, and the beast refers to humans. So in that epithet, Enki, the Son of Man, man refers to King Anu, where we get the term annual. So for them, he appeared here about 600 BC of the Great Feast. And so one annual for them is 3,600 up to the time of zero. So when she's on her planet, those who study Anunnaki know the story of Black Madonna is she had a child in wedlock with Yahweh, and Leel's his name in the ancient text. We call him Yahweh. They had a child in wedlock, and now she's told that she will never marry. She's always to be Black Madonna. And for his part in it, Yahweh is known as his name is Blackened. Mm-hmm. So when that couple decides to leave,
I have a question.
Yep.
And remember where you are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any information when they're all still home on the home planet of Nibiru, and Enki is to wed Damkina in a political marriage, a political alliance, and Ninurta is born to Ninmah and Enlil.
Yes.
Was the birth of Ninurta before Damkina, before Anu broke up, Enki and his wedding? Did she run to Enlil's arms because she was upset that her father had broken up her wedding, or did she first go and make a child with Enlil? We're trying to get.
I always understood, Janet, that she was enamored by that military presence of Enlil all the way through. Damkina only shows up in the fight that went on, the civil war between Alalu and Anu. And Miss Hardy has a little different interpretation of that part of the text. I hope to go on the show tonight and talk about it. But then when Alalu shows up, it's determined that, of course, that the first daughter of Alalu to marry the son of Anu would take the throne away from the children of Anu and Ninki. So
that's why she's Black, because she broke the contract by having the child with Enlil.
What's referred to as a contract?
Well, she was betrothed to Enki.
I don't have the information. I don't have the information. Okay, so she was always in love with Enlil and didn't really give him the time of day, Enki.
Mm-hmm.
She had to marry one of the two of them, and it was going to be Enlil until they had the child out of wedlock, and then now they can't get married.
We have a part where it seems that she was betrothed. But come over here. What's your interpretation?
In the Lost Book of Enki, which, of course, Enki dictated in 2025 BCE in order to justify himself, Enki said that he had already been in love with with Ninmah. He was madly in love with her, and that they were everybody understood they were engaged to be married. But before that could happen, Alalu killed Lama and said to Anu, listen, you're supposed to be the successor, but instead of you and I having a civil war, marry your son Enki to my daughter Damkina. Anu says, but she's already betrothed to Enki. And Alalu said, well, look, you want a civil war, do it. And he said, okay, for the planet, I'll do it. And so it broke Nima's heart, and she was so bereft of her beloved's attention that she turned to the dashing. And that was this word that Sitchin used in the translation. Enlil, the dashing military man. And then she got knocked up and had a baby.
That's what we think, but we're just trying to track down the ancient texts that say which, the different. But then, go ahead.
I could do it and report back to you. The key part of what Dr. Lessin is saying is that Enki, no doubt, loved Nima from his childhood. And this is the same expression used by Solomon when he talks about Asherah, the woman of the tree. Her I have loved, dark but comely. And that's the one I'm going to marry. So what Solomon, once he began to realize that the Jewish archaeologists have never found any evidence at all of a King Solomon or a King David in Jerusalem. Now you take that out of the puzzle. You put that story in neutral. So these are not Jewish kings, and they're not Jewish. Either they didn't exist, or there's a mistake made. And so here's Solomon saying, I'm going to marry her. I'm going to marry the one I've loved since my childhood. Now, Solomon is known to be the Prince of Peace and the Son of God. Those are his two epithets. Mm-hmm. And he's doing things strangely similar, Solomon, to a pharaoh named Sheshonq. For the audience, we're floating around the time 1000 BC. We have Abraham at 2000 BC. We have Moses at 1500 BC. We have Solomon and David at 1000 BC. We have Jesus Christos in Greece at 500 BC. And we have Jesus Christos again in Jerusalem at 0. Those are your timelines. So in the last sentence of the Bible, the second last sentence of the Bible, I think it's chapter 22:16, it says, the voice is saying, the speaker is saying, I was the father and the son of David. And once you realize that Solomon married Pharaoh's daughter, Ralph Ellis, the great scholar in England, found 2 sarcophagi in Egyptian burial grounds, golden. One's got the head of a hawk on it. And on the chest is the term Solomon and David in Egyptian. So now we begin to see that Solomon is doing the same things as Pharaoh Sheshonq. His father is the Pharaoh Susenes II, and David's father is the Pharaoh Susenes I. So David's no longer a shepherd boy. The idea of shepherd God is there. That imagery is there. But if David's a pharaoh and his father's a pharaoh, and you see in the last chapter of the Bible, if you're following that story, I was the father and son of David. And what Ralph Ellis...
And what book is that in again?
It's called Solomon, Falcon of Sheba. His name is Ralph, R-A-L-P-H, Ellis, E-L-L-I-S.
Oh, it's not in the Bible.
In the lineage he gives the Egyptian pharaohs in one lineage, and beside them he puts the Hebrew kings. And you realize they're the same people. From the Tower of Babel, when the tongues got scrambled, we all got fooled. But it lines up perfectly. The Egyptian pharaohs, they're just the Arabic name for the Hebrew kings. But the Hebrew scholars and the Arabic scholars, they are not allowed to speak to each other. And so what he does in the text, the curious thing he does is he says, above Jesse, the lineage breaks. And after Solomon, there's a break in the lineage. And both the Hebrew scholars and the Arab scholars both agree there's a missing link. It's missing there. They call it a break in the lineage. So I asked, where did Jesse come from? And why is he never mentioned? After Saul was killed, Yahweh just yanks David out of nowhere, this kind of scruffy shepherd boy. And he, of course, slings the rock and he kills the giant, and the whole thing's great. And David loves Saul, Yahweh, blah, blah, blah. But then something funny happens in the story. But Yahweh loves David so much, he will never take the throne from the children of David, called the Davidian covenant. It took one generation to Solomon. What Solomon did, he brought the woman of the tree into, her name is Asherah. Look it up in it's 2 Kings 2. He brings Asherah into Jerusalem. And the woman of the tree, is my theory, is that it's Ninmah's image from Sumer. And saying to Yahweh, we both know you're not the only God. Because here's the female scientist who fashioned the first Adam. And with that, Yahweh does the second or third time he's lied. He breaks the covenant of David. That lasted one generation. And he kicks out Solomon and Asherah. So Solomon never dies in the Bible. He just kind of wanders off somewhere. You can read about that somewhere else, the Bible says. And then they laud David some more, and they big funeral for David. But my theory is Solomon is Enki. He snuck in there into that lineage. He sired the strapping David. Then he marries Pharaoh's daughter. We know Solomon, son of God, and the Prince of Peace, that's how he's known, marries Pharaoh's daughter. And then he had 1,000 concubines and wives, 700 wives and 300 concubines. Oh, what a fun. No, he's giving his seed all over the world because Enlil is the lord of the land and Enki is the lord of the waters. That's why he's always seen at water's edge. But now he's seeding the earth. His offspring can go onto the earth and battle the forces of Yahweh, if that comes to that. But David's line, Ralph Ellis says, went into Germany. It didn't stay in Israel. And the rabbis will not admit to this. No, that I've met, the ones that I've met will debate it. Of course, we have the great kings and Solomon, blah, 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 blah. We have just their homework. But the line of David, DVD, goes into the Cambrian Franks in Germany between the line with France. And that's the Cambrian Franks. The grandmother was assaulted in the water by a sea beast named Merovingian and was impregnated with this lineage. So the female Cambrian Frank, my theory is, was Enki, swimming in the waters there, one of the 1,000 concubines, 300 concubines that he had, fornicated with that, put his seed in there, and then brought his own line from David, and they intermarried the 2 lines of Enki. And that lineage became the Merovingian, became the Merovingian kings of France. The Cambrian Franks became the French, and this great bloodline was there with Enki's bloodline, and both lines became the great kings of the world. And they were killed by the father, Pepin the Fat of Charlemagne, and then that's where we lost the thread from Sumer. The Holy Roman Empire took over, and they're off to the races with all the way to the Austrian Empire. 1,000 years they lasted, 800 to 1800 AD. And that's the only story we're told as citizens of this planet from that time of Jesus. You're in the Dark Ages. Those Dark Ages, they're not Dark Ages. There's scholars that are writing in the period about what happened. We've come a long way from what Lessin said.
Yep. Right there and ask a couple questions. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, it was a little bit blurry, so I didn't quite catch everything you said. So Enki entered his line into the Merovingians, and he was also in the other German.
Be careful where the Merovingians come from. The female line comes from the Cambrian Franks and Merovingians in the 3rd century. The male line comes from David in Israel.
Okay.
And so that lineage joining became the Merovingian kings. Merovius, the son, I think, is Clovis. He's second or third in the line, Clovis.
So the Merovingians are supposed to have. The Merovingians are supposed to have the Jesus bloodline. The story is in the traditional Bible story. I mean, I'm just looking at the warping of the story in the story, right?
Right.
So you're
exactly right as usual.
Right. So
the problem is how did Jesus' blood get into the Merovingian, into Merovius, his great mother, in the 3rd century? Merovius has nothing to do with Jesus Christ in Jerusalem, if that's where he's from. Jesus Christ is the baby born in Jerusalem. How does Jesus' sperm get into Merovius' bloodline? There's a 300-year gap there.
Right. So
I think
then you look
the sea
at
beast was Enki.
And then you mentioned Charlemagne. So say what you said again about it went all the way to Charlemagne or something.
When you get to Dagobert, and there was one weak king after that, but when you get to Dagobert, the last great Merovingian king, he was stabbed in the eye in the Satanica forest in Germany and killed by Pepin the Fat's forces. And with that, Pepin the Fat, through the weight of the Rome, made the deal with the Vatican that would support, the Vatican gold would support Charlemagne. And that then became the Holy Roman Empire eventually, where the kings and queens of Europe had to go into a contract with the Vatican if they're going to go anywhere. And that empire, of course, was unchallenged for 1,000 years in public. But the artists like Da Vinci had this other hidden underground story that the Knights Templar found in Jerusalem. Now here's Jerusalem again. Why they're fighting over Jerusalem? Because they're fighting over what's underneath the place. Remember the Golden Dome and that whole thing going on. When Muhammad flew into the air, blah, blah, blah. It's what they found under Temple Mount. The 9 knights that came from Europe, from France, went down there, and led by Bernard of Clairvaux, Saint Bernard, the great Saint Bernard, who was naming popes at the time. That's how powerful he was. But Hildegard de Bingen, the great female hermeticist and alchemist and everything else going on, she gave them a vision. From her visions, where to dig, what they were looking for. And with that guide, that map, that treasure map, they went in and they found something. And it's been always a mystery what they found. But after that, they became extremely wealthy for the next 200 years. And when they're killed in 1307, what the Pope and King Philip stole was the International Bank. And that's where I go in front of these judges in Ontario, in Canada where I am, and I'm asking them now, we just filed in court this week, in federal court, a challenge to the junior judge who said we were wrong on a financial instrument. And I'm saying to that judge in court, he wouldn't see me in court face-to-face, he did it in writing. I've asked for a reconsideration orally face-to-face. You tell me your experience in international finance, an international instrument. And he's going to say he doesn't have it. He just kicked us out of court without even thinking about it. But I know my history. The International Bank of the Central Bank of Basel, Switzerland, goes all the way back to the Knights Templar's murder when they grabbed that, when the King Philip and the Pope grabbed the International Bank. Mm-hmm. And for the next 500, 700 years, England and France, and sometimes Germany, fought over that banking system. And the people who were paid the price were the citizens who died in those wars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For no other reason.
So this is
no reason.
This is the ongoing battle between the two clans, the Yankeites and the Anglo-ites.
Mm-hmm.
And so Charlemagne, all the presidents, most of them, are related. They go back to Charlemagne.
There you go.
So you're saying that Charlemagne is an Enki?
No, he's just picked. He's picked. I think his father is Pepin the Fat. I can't be sure of that. I think his father's Pepin the Fat. It's an unusual name, but whatever the hell it means. He had a lot of power. And the key was he set the Hernol, the mayors of Hernol, Hernoul. That's who he hired to go in and kill Dagobert. And a very famous painting called the Arnolfini portrait, and it's in about 1434, allegedly, is a picture-perfect painting in oil, and it's the one that everybody else tried to copy the style of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first one. It's like the Great Pyramid's the first one, and everything else is kind of a weak falling down copy. So the first great painting is the Arnolfini portrait, but it's not taught in schools. Fine arts majors know it. If you study art history, you'll know it. So, but on the name of that artwork, before it went into the British Museum, on the frame, Lawrence Gardner recorded the fact that the name is Hernol Lefin, Lefin. So the end of the Merovingian kings. The picture is about the end of the Merovingian kings. So now the name Arnolfini, which came from a guy named Panofsky at Harvard, and you couldn't get a job in the Ivy League or anywhere else if you went against Panofsky, and he said it's the Arnolfinis, but then they find out that the Arnolfini's dead. She's dead 6 years before they legislated the painting. So maybe it's her funeral, but it doesn't look like a funeral. It looks like a wedding in the painting. So that's 6 years. Now it's been renamed the double portrait. Now we're getting a slow-moving church, that excommunicated poor Galileo for like 400 years. Now it's slowly moving from the Arnolfini portrait to the double portrait.
Did
the
Yankee
double portrait...
paint it?
What?
Did Yankee paint that? Did Yankee paint?
The question is, who painted this thing? So in the very center of the painting, you paint your name, you signed your name on the frame. The artist would sign the frame in that period. In the center of the painting is Johanes, Oannes. You have to know your the fish god of Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
Here is a painting of the fish god of Babylon. Because in Abraham's name is not Abraham, it's Abram. And Sarah didn't have an H. For reasons I guess in my book 5, I have to guess at it, they begin to add an H. H is the energy, the symbol for the energy between the earth and the sun and Sirius. That's complicated. You see the pictorial in the book when it comes out, you'll see it. But so I just begin to assume that the Johannes, they put the H in the middle, and the J is silent, you get Oannes. Oannes was here, Estfuk. Foot hick. Oannes was here, or is here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's a picture of Oannes, the fish god, who doesn't have any fish scales on. Then you've got to know the rest of the story. In that painting, in the middle, just above Oannes, is the convex mirror. It's not a flat mirror. And my daughter, number 2, says, Dad, that's the symbol for the Stargate in The Matrix. Well, I have not watched the Matrix movies, but I'll take your word for it. That's a Stargate. So that's going to be about 1950 in astrophysics. That knowledge is coming up. But why a convex mirror? So my hairdresser, I'm talking to her, but that's to everybody. And she says to me, I see things in paintings nobody else sees. I said, well, these 4 scholars over 25 years at the middle of the BBC, they don't know what, it's loaded with mystery, but we don't know even the first one, and we give up. So why not ask the hairdresser to have a look at it, right? She calls me that night and says, look, Glenn, in the middle of the painting, in the mirror, which is the center focal point of the painting, the couple that's in front facing the artist, it's convex because their hands are going forward now in the mirror, right? If you have a convex mirror, the 2 are holding hands and their hands up around the shoulders in the picture. Their hands are going forward. And the point that is the vortex of their hands going forward is the pregnant belly of a woman in blue, which somehow Panofsky called the mayor. That's the local mayor. I don't know why he's pregnant. I can only imagine why he's wearing blue, unless the mayor is a woman. It's the Virgin Mary. It's Virga Mara, which in Greek is the woman of the 7th planet, Our Lady of the 7th planet, who came from the sea, Mara, the fish god. And here they are putting something, and he holds the hand up of the woman in that painting. they're asking you, in my opinion, it's not a betrothal. What does she have in her hand? She has the ovum of the ape and the sperm of the Anunnaki, and she's putting it into the womb of Damkina, the wife of Enki. And beside the woman in blue who's pregnant is the famous, if you know the painting, Watery Man. This is a picture-perfect painting, Dr. Lessin. So why is this man weaving and like wobbly, like a melting popsicle, with a red hat on? Red's always a symbol of Sirius. He's going into the Stargate. And when you look around the mirror, which is picture-perfect, the water is spinning, except down to the right, it's black. So the watery experience of going through the black hole is depicted around the ring of the mirror as you begin to accelerate into the... It's the only way I can explain the Watery Man is beginning to go into the Stargate. And there you have the painting, a double painting, Enki with Damkina, who mothered Eve, and then in the front you have Enki marrying the Magdalene at the wedding at Cana.
Wow.
So we've got the origins of man in the painting. The painter had to know. So Jen's question is always so clever and timely. Who painted this thing? So it has to be somebody who knew about the Immaculate Conception in Ethiopia, which we have proven, National Geographic proved it in 2006, that the human beings were developed from a petri dish with advanced sperm from the planet. We know that is the Immaculate Conception, 200,000 BC. We know the place and the time. They would have to know that. They would have to know that Jesus married the Magdalene at the wedding at Cana. And they would have to know it was the Magdalene who had the sperm in her hand. And she has horns on her head, by the way, guys. My eldest daughter is the lawyer, doesn't really follow stuff that closely. Look again, Dad. She has two horns. Her hair, the way the veil is, there's two horns in her head, which is the sign of Enki and the Anunnaki. And then we have behind that the Stargate of around 1950. So you tell me who painted this. I associate that image with Saint Germain for a lot of different reasons, but Saint Germain was known to be a fantastic painter. And I use Saint Germain as that becomes in my theory, that becomes the cover name for Enki. Why? Because Saint Germain was known to Voltaire. And Voltaire says, for 70 years I knew this bastard. He never got any older. He spoke every language in the world perfectly. He claimed to be at the wedding in Cana, at the building of the Great Pyramid, and I was hanging around here, teaching everybody all this stuff, and he never gets any older. That's his Saint Germain. He was last seen in Mount Shasta, California, in 1945. The same character.
So
and now I hear today.
Is that also, Leonardo da Vinci?
Well, yeah, now here's the great point, Jen. Here's the great point. Here's the great Jen Lessin again, the fantastic hostess, is that we don't know shit about Da Vinci, about Leonardo. We don't know anything. His mother's a whore, and he was a street. Shut up. They don't know anything about this guy.
What's
that?
The story of Lazarus Long by Robert Heinlein, and he was talking about, and this is a story that a number of people have explored in film and stuff, but the man who never ages, that pretends to age and die and move on. There was even a Star Trek episode in the original series about the man who never aged, and he eventually moved off planet. So that seems to be Enki. I'm saying that.
And are you saying he associates this with Leonardo?
I'm getting that you're looking at this incredible artist that goes through time and leaves hidden messages for us to decipher later in movies. Because
all the mathematics of the human body, for God's sake.
Right.
Well, and right there, Dr. Lessin, Michelangelo. Now they come out. I forget the name of the series. It's from the BBC. And he's claiming that Michelangelo was next door in the basement at night doing the autopsies on corpses, which was forbidden by the church. And that's where he got his detailed knowledge of the human body. And in the Pieta, they say that the Pieta of the woman holding Jesus' crucified body, the back is actually a heart when you look from behind, indicating that I know that the heart is in the. I have seen it in the autopsy. Like, don't forget, in 1800s, the one first guy came up with a circulatory system for the body, he ended up in the insane asylum. They wouldn't listen to him for nothing. The humors and the tumors, whatever else they were talking about, the bloodletting. He said, no, you idiots, there's a circulatory system in the body. Oh, shut up. And so on and on. When they first found the first pituitary gland, for 50 years they threw it in the garbage. The computer for the brain. They threw that big gland, throw that out. We don't need that. Let's get to the good stuff in here. Oh, my God. So this kind of mentality that goes on when we started the show.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Hold this shot. Because we're going to do where we got. So we back in about this.
How you doing? I'm on a break. Yeah. My friend said me. Going back to my second hour. Yeah, I'm for 2 hours, 8 to 10. Yeah, 2 hour show. So, no, the radio. So I got to where I was going, and so we should do. Where's your coat? He's like my mother. Where's my coat?
Please be quiet. We can hear you.
Where's your coat? Did you have to eat? Oh.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I'm your host, Janet Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin. And our special guest today is Glenn-bogue. And before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to the donation button on freedomslips.com and donate whatever you can. $1, $5, $15, $20, $25, $30, $100, $500, $1,000. Whatever you donate is greatly appreciated, and we do thank you very much for your donation. And Mad Painter, Thomas Becker, any specials? What's going on?
No, ma'am, but I do encourage people to buy the seed packs. Spring's just around the corner.
Right, and these seed packs, what are they? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We have a $60 pack, which is a one season, and then we have a community pack, or a neighborhood pack, which is $100, which is 35,400 seeds, 56 varieties. And then we got a community pack, which is 200, and I got no clue how many is in there. I'm not counting them.
Wow. And that's
well, that's how you survive Monsanto.
They are all heirloom seeds, no GMO.
And these are vegetables, and are there any flowers, and what's in it? Do you have any idea?
No, this is just edible food.
Edible foods. Okay, it's all edible. Okay, wow. Thanks for telling us about that. Sash, what did you want to say before we bring back Glenn?
Well, this is at the beginning of the show. I asked each person who's listening to just imagine that they were embodying or identifying with their concept or their felt presence of the archetype or fractal of Jesus. And so, Glenn, if you were to let Jesus use your vocal apparatus and state your existence, say what you're like, what your characteristics and qualities are, what you want of humanity and what you want of Glenn, what would you say?
World peace. You have to know your history of your planet and your race to figure out who's pulling the strings here behind all these egregious wars. I could not imagine going into the woods of where I live here in Toronto and with the rifle. Come on, Sash, we've had enough. We're going in the woods with the rifles and start cleaning it out and shooting people. It's insane behavior. I was reading the story of Senator Kerry from Nebraska, not the one from Boston, but the senator from Nebraska, and he went to Vietnam and mowed down about 25 elderly people in the bushes or trees. He couldn't see who it was, killed all the children. And with him, that was fine. He said, I went there thirsting for blood. And we were playing ball hockey when I was busy. We were playing ball hockey and football and having fun. We weren't thirsting for blood and seeking to go to Vietnam. So the wars are conducted in a way that the people are trained their minds to first of all, unable to express what Dr. Lessin said about your cellular knowledge. You're usually too ashamed or too embarrassed to be laughed at. But you can only push back the bounds of knowledge by going your own path and your own truth and step over the line and expand, as I said, expand the bounds of knowledge. But that gets repressed inside the body. The sexual urges get repressed in the Catholic Church. That's the religion that I know. And get repressed and get expressed in violent ways. And when you ask yourself, who's doing this? Who's having man kill man or man rape women? It's Yahweh. It's Allah. Allah created the three religions. They all come from Abraham. We're all brothers and sisters. How in the hell can the Muslims be killing the Christians and the Jews? How can the Christians be killing the Muslims in the three Crusades? And they're all fighting over Jerusalem, and nobody seems to know why. So that's what I would hold company. As long as once you begin to know your history, you've got to know your Bible really well, which is so taboo now in the Ivy Leagues, which run most of the crown head of most of the universities in the United States. If you're not honoring what's coming out of the Ivy Leagues, you're an idiot. And so they poo-poo the Bible. And those of us who are knowledgeable in the Anunnaki texts of Sitchin, it's only been 30, 40 years now, we've had those texts, but often they don't read the Bible. So what I did, sitting between the two worlds, I put them back together, two halves of a whole. And now you're telling a hell of a story. What I came across this week, 2 weeks ago, the chief calls me from L.A. And in his Aboriginal language, Enki means father.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so we know from Sitchin that Enki fornicated with the daughters of Eve and created Homo sapiens sapiens. And we know that. But when you talk to Jesus in the time of zero, he says, you see me, you see the Father. The Father and I are one. Well, the Catholic Church has to concoct the Trinity. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost male. Well, no, it's Holy Spirit. And Holy Spirit was always Ninma. Always. Up to that point. Or shortly there before, after Babylon. You kind of lost that knowledge. But the point is, all of a sudden, it's an all-male affair. The women are pushed off the stage. And it's in their cells, Dr. Lewis. We know this. It's in the cells of males as well, but more so in females, because they're tied, magnetic field of the females tied to the magnetic field of the earth. So that's why I'm saying if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And they keep repeating the same story about every 30 years. I was at dinner tonight with a couple from Iran, and they said Iran has never had a war in 300 years. They've never caused a war. I think we went on with the Iran-Iraq war for 10 years. That was largely U.S.-inspired, whatever went on there. They hired Saddam Hussein to go in there and whatever the hell was going on with that thing. But the United States now has had, I think, 13 wars in the last 30 years. And now it comes out of Eisenhower's diary. It comes out of Eisenhower's diary. They secretly killed the president of Iran and put the Shah in there. They set out to murder the democratically leader of Iran. Well, then shut up. Shut up on the point of being terrorists. And start teaching your children the real history. And then you begin to see what Glenn's talking about. You get the bigger picture from zero and Sumer all the way to this 6,000-year history. Not Jesus and not Muhammad from 800 forward. You get the whole thing going on. Who is Abraham? Well, my theory is that
the three parties, who keeps the war going? So we had the Anunnaki they were in our lives and they were visible, and then they went behind the thrones and the kingships and the priesthoods.
And so that's the piece that kind of gets lost in translation. Who's keeping the wars going, and how are they keeping it going?
Great point,
Go ahead.
It's the International Bank. So it's
and
the
who found
the Knights Templar. Well, the Knights Templar did, but for the purpose of getting your money safely, if you had an asset in Berlin, you could go to South Africa and be given your asset in South Africa, or from London to the Vatican. You could travel without any worry. You might need a little insurance, maybe, but you get your gold at the other end of the. So it was the original American Express travelers checks. That was the original bank. Now that morphed into the banking with gold. Once Russia had more gold than America, they won that war. They won the war in outer space with Gagarin, and before John Glenn, and then they had won the war of the gold. So with Russia having more gold than the Americans, off the gold standard they went. We just had a gal give the IRS of Canada a check for $3 million, written on her birth certificate. And we were lambasted by the judge. That's not a real check. Well, I'm going to ask that judge when I get in that on television, so somebody somebody TV conference now across the nation, get on that with that judge. I'm going to ask him, well, then which check is a good check? Well, the one drawn on a bank in Switzerland. Well, let's draw a check for $3 million. Does the bank in Switzerland have $3 million? No, they have a computer entry with 3 and 9 zeros. It's a debt in their computer. They don't have the $3 million, Your Honor. And so now you've got this ballooning fractional reserve, which you have to have 10% of the money in your bank. You can lend out 9 to 10 or 40 times as George Bush Jr., and the balloon gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the debt gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and now we can't pay it back. Now it's $3 quadrillion. It's 3 trillion is the global debt, compounding every second. And it's a runaway train. So what caused the war? The people who are feeding at that table. And you're killing each other. There's a case in the Supreme Court of Canada fighting over a burned-up $5 bill. And can the bank take the burned-up $5? Can you go to the Bank of Canada and get the... You don't have the $5 anymore, right? It's paid to the bearer. You don't have the $5, so 4 judges are saying it's no good. You haven't got the dollar. The other 4 say, no, it's just a symbol of a debt that the bank owes. This is the Supreme Court of Canada can't agree. It's a worthless piece of paper burned up.
Huh.
Now, those are 8 of the most learned men in the country, allegedly. And I'm going, what? It's the Bank of Montreal versus the Bank of Canada is the case. So this is what we're getting. We're getting this completely fooled planet, starting with Abraham, who was bribed. It's the same bribe that he gave to Moses. It's to get him out of Egypt, where they were safe. If Moses is Akhenaten, Nefertiti said, don't go out there. Don't go out there with that wacko. Out they went for 40 years, and Moses, of course, never came back and never made it to Israel. So that initial bribe, then when and Yahweh goes into Jerusalem against the bridegroom to be Jesus, he does what? Go to the desert, and he bribes him with land and heritage. I'll make these humans your footstool. And he says, get behind me, devil. Get behind me. Because in the book of John 8, he calls the father of Abraham, the God of Abraham, a liar and a murderer from the beginning. And that's not a phrase you'll ever see in any Catholic church or any synagogue in the world. Father of Abraham is a murderer and a liar from the beginning. Once we identify Enlil with Yahweh, it's unmistakable. He lied to Eve. He lied about the flood. He lied about the golden calf. When Moses came down from the mountain, what's the first thing he did?
He smashed the calf.
No one knows. No, the people, he had them smash that and turn it to powder. But that golden calf is Ninmah. It's Hathor in Sinai, where they were. That's what that language has is Hathor. But Hathor is Ninmah, the original scientist. But Moses tells the Levi priest to slit the throats of 3,000 people while they slept. Coward and broke the second commandment, thou shalt not kill. And now you're seeing the henchmen of Yahweh doing atrocities all over the world based on a financial imbalance in the world. Under the Aboriginal world, the female, and I couldn't believe she knew this, the clan grandmother north of Toronto, about 3 hours north, taught me that we always had women own the land because their DNA goes back much further than the male. DNA at Washington under National Geographic proved that. The males go back to 70,000 and it gets lost. The female goes right back to 200,000 where it stops. The clan grandmother knew that. Who's teaching you that? My grandmother when I was 5. We're not going to tell the men. They'll just go to screw it up. So, if we befriended the clan grandmother and not destroyed her in Canada, it was found on the Truth Commission that they destroyed the clan grandmother heritage. We had this knowledge a lot earlier, Janet. We were like retarded. So here comes, I almost fell out of the bed, Bruce Lipton, right? The father of epigenetics. That what you think about is what your DNA expresses, not the other way around. And he's writing about the central bank, and he's writing about the clan grandmother. What? So he's right on the solution. A woman wouldn't send her children into war. I don't think. Maybe Margaret Thatcher would have. Would Merkel do it? Catherine the Great, maybe.
Well, they don't end up sending their children to war. They send the children of poor people to war.
Yeah, but I'm saying that Elizabeth did it, but I'm not too sure of Elizabeth's background. The Aboriginals say they saw the Queen and Philip at a picnic of Aboriginal people in central Canada, and that eyewitness that was there, he's about 10 years old, he saw them show up in like regular, woolen overcoats and things. They weren't wearing the royal gear, and took 10 children from the picnic, and those 10 children never came back. And he was killed. The Queen showed up at Philip and took the 10 children. They're never seen again. And that eyewitness was killed. Yeah, and that eyewitness was killed last year.
Wow. Well,
Canada's at least trying. They're trying to get the truth out. They spent $60 million to get the truth out. But slowly it's coming out. Here's Bruce Lipton talking about the clan grandmother and all the knowledge that she has in her bloodline. So then we find out, interestingly enough, now there's an R2K gene that the Aboriginal people of North America have coming out of Peru. And it's called the Kennequan man. They know he has it, and 27 other people in the world have it. It's a mummified cadaver about I forget the date of it, maybe 2000 BC, 1500. It's got this. So the chief I work with in North, the clan grandmother's ex-husband, the chief of the Métis, he has it. So they called him from I think it was Denmark. They were doing the research on this thing. How many do you know in your family have that? About 400 of us.
Oh.
What the Smithsonian calls, and now they're going to study this family of Aboriginal people, but he claims the Y2K came from Peru, where we fornicated with the ones who came down from the heavens.
Ah.
So here's a second story from Sitchin saying the Nephilim in Sumer, in Tigris-Euphrates, have that story. Here's the same story told in North America, South America.
Sasha has a question.
No, it's not just questions.
Okay.
I guess we go along. I feel a little details because of my studies. But when Prince Marduk was closing in on the spaceport in Sinai that was run by Enlil's people, and his Marduk's son Nabu was coming up Canaan. Sodom and Gomorrah and Zoar had gone over to him. And it took several, decades for all this to develop. Enlil sent Ninurta, his son, and Adad, Viracocha, with a whole bunch of Indians, that is, people from India, the descendants of Cain, and brought them to the Lake Titicaca area, where they made Tiahuanaco and Huanaco underneath the sea, and getting ready for the takeoff at Nazca. And the whole idea was, if the Sinai space facilities were to fall to the Enkyites, and especially likely because Seth had taken over in Canaan, then the Anunnaki who wanted to leave could get away. So that's all part of what I would fill into how those Indians got there, and then they survived on the lake in Titicaca during the Noah's flood. So I had those kind of details. Another detail from Sitchin that I found really interesting is that when I read it very closely, the second improved hybrids that Enki made, and he was always improving them, which was 200,000 years ago, he had a kid named Adapa with one beautiful descendant of Adam and Titi and a Tiamat, and another a child, a girl named Titi, with another of these Adamite girls. And so the two children that he had were Adapa and Titi. And Enki, in his story, got Titi pregnant with Cain, whereas Adapa got her pregnant with the twin Abel. And so that we have so that when they were going to kill Cain, the council was going to kill Cain for killing his brother, and he said that hey, you can't do that. This is my seed. This is my son directly. You've got to let him live and breed. So that's another little. As you go along, I get all these kind of details that I know what you're talking about, and I have sort of a more depth in it.
But this is what happened, Dr. Lessin. With a lot of my work, I'd meet people as I go through my search in the last 15 years. I'll use both paradigms, the Catholic Church story, and I use the story of the Anunnaki, and I just keep adding bulbs to the tree as I go. I hear you've come around and shown knowledge I didn't have, that they swung around and went to Peru, and so the ones that came down from the heavens there were likely, again, the Anunnaki. They don't have that name, I don't think, in the ancient Métis language, but that fellow in Los Angeles sure had the fact that Enki means father. And maybe this is why the Vatican sent his forces, that he sent Cortez and Pizarro, went in there to wipe them all out. Yeah. So under the Catholic version, all of a sudden Virgin Mary shows up in Guadalupe, what, to oversee the murdering of two nations? In North America and South America, 100 million people killed, so they could regenerate the Catholic faith there.
Amazing.
That makes no sense. I think that the Guadalupe who appeared was Ninma or Vergamara. Take your pick.
And what was she doing there? What was her purpose?
I think to warn them that this is what was coming. It was 1530. I don't know my dates that close on Cortez, but he is the same. She spoke to a high Mayan priest. The church always has them be some shepherd boy. Right? The shepherd boy, the vision appeared, and he went down to the bishop, and the bishop said, "Bring me the roses of France or the Alps," and all of a sudden he opens the cape up, and she put the roses in his grass cape, and then he opens up the cape, and the roses fell to the ground. But the cape is still there, incorrupt. In Mexico City, they're in a glass case, and on the cape is the cosmogony of the Maya people, hidden in plain sight. Oh, this is a shepherd boy knew this? No, he's a high Mayan priest. And the shaman who I visited here about 5 years ago at our home in Toronto, so that she's being taught by the high Mayan priests that all of it in the United States universities is wrong. So let's wipe it out. Let's go and see the Mayan priests and find out what they're teaching and begin to teach that as a truth. So we have David as a shepherd boy. No, he's the son of Jesse, a strapping bastard of a guy killed to knock that giant cold. Holy crap. So we got him as the shepherd boy. And then you have the story of Joan of Arc. And now there's a lawyer in Vermont who's saying, wait a minute, there's no waif from the woods who's having visions and knocks on the door of the castle and fires all the generals. This is the queen in waiting. She's trained in the finest military schools in Europe. And she takes the reins of the battle, wipes out the king, chases him back to London from Paris, the British king that was there, and puts her father back on the throne. But the three men realize that whoever she marries now, she's going to kick all their asses. They'll be the strongest couple in all of Europe. So they kill her, burn her at the stake, and they make her into a saint. The queen.
Wow.
Yeah,
if you can do that, you're capable of anything.
Saint.
What's that?
The same king killed her. This very same guy who kills her at one point, later on celebrates her as a saint.
It's her father she put on the throne.
Wow.
Killed his own daughter. That's her theory. Makes a lot more sense than the waif showing up. All of a sudden, she's wiping out the strongest army in Europe. Come on. And so my theory is that for Nefertiti, huh?
Oh, I just remember the other thing. I just remember the other thing about where even before the Knights Templar got their various monopolies, that way back when Inanna had exceeded her authority and conquered all of Sumer with the help of Nergal, Ninurta's cavalry came back and conquered everything, and he kept things in control with his aircraft. But he had to be there. And when he went to make the spaceport on top of the Andes, then his cavalry from Elam just looted all of Sumer except Lagash, which was Ninurta's city. And so Enlil appointed Nanar. Nanar had this scheme. Let's get everybody trading, and then we won't have to war as much. Well, of course, Enlil did not trust his son Nanar because Nanar had sort of secretly been part of Anzu's rebellion from Mars, and so he sent Terra, his personal toady, to make sure that Nanar didn't undermine Enlil. And so anyway, that's a little bit I could fill in one of the stories that you were saying about the credit that the idea of using debt to keep people bound. And of course, Alexander Hamilton tried in the Federalist Papers, he's trying to say the same thing needed to be done for the United States in order to be a part of international trade. We have to owe money to everybody.
Yeah, I just saw I was in Philadelphia with my kids live. I just saw the first two banks, and they were closed. They were closed finally Hamilton's banks were closed, but they gave a hell of a shot at it. But that goes back to the Garden of Eden, where you've got Eve talking to Yahweh on the one side, and on the other side, she's got this guy, Hanakash. And I found out in my book 5, I reported it, that Hanakash in the noun is serpent. But that form of Hanakash is the shining one, the adjective, the shining one. And so O'Brien in England, who's 30 years research, is not Sitchin, it's a guy named O'Brien, and his wife did 30 years research. They came up with the term, she's talking to a shining one. And the Hebrew scholar in Washington State, Michael Heiser, now says it's the shining one. So I don't care who the shining one is, but two scholars from two different cultures, Hebrew and Sumer, are now saying that Eve is talking to the shining one, not the serpent. Change the story. So she decides to go with the shining one, who's teaching her all this knowledge. And what did Jesus do? Jesus Christos in Jerusalem, he gets up on the mountain and he shines. He transfigures. Yeah. And then he says, all of this you will do and more. Well, I'm going, what the hell? He's going across the water. He's raising the dead. Now he's transfiguring. We're going to do more than that? We'll just write it down and say, that's right, let's have a go at it. Not, what's he talking about? Well, I didn't say it, he said it. Now we're going through the Stargate. Now, since 2013, the women can go through the Stargate and take their men with them. They're magnetic, they're electrical. So that's the next phase of knowledge, starting in the age of Aquarius. But no one uses astrology because it's too wacky. It's not wacky. Astrology
is saying is that at the very time that Eve, who actually was created sometime after Adam was made for cloning, she's way smarter than he is to begin with. But when she makes love and has a conception and has a full-on Kundalini experience with him, that's when she has this distinction. I'm not an animal anymore. I'm a person. I'm connecting with another person. That's the beginning of a higher consciousness in humanity, in the way Dr. Hardy looks at it.
And so one of the scholars put in there that's where they took down, I can't remember who the scholar is, then Yahweh brought down the debt system from the Orion star system. And he saddled onto Eve right there. The system of the web of debt went on right there.
Wow.
And the only way he was going to get over was financially.
What star
from Orion.
system
It came from Orion. And I can't think now. I keep it up in my head, but I can't think now of who said that. But that it was brought down from the Orion star system to punish Eve for listening. So in another story I found out was Miriam, the sister of Moses. Now we're back to the start of the show that Moses is the one who judged you. He's the judging bastard, not Jesus. Moses' sister was Miriam, and she's the only other woman in the Bible to challenge Yahweh toe-to-toe. She said, what about me? I'm the co-prophetess. And she's the prophet of the waters. And I got a feeling she parted the Red Sea. And Moses grabbed the credit for it. Because she was providing the water to the Jews in the desert. And when she left, they were dying of thirst. And there's a way for females that they can use the spiritual water through their crown. This fire hose comes out of the yoni. And they can fill a vase of water inside of about 3 minutes.
Woo!
I've seen it. I've seen that point come out of women. I'm talking to my friend in the bar I've known for 40 years. We don't usually talk about these things with some strange guy, and we get blabbing about this. And he said, yeah, I've seen that too. Well, I've known you for 40 years. What are you going to tell me? Well, it was kind of personal. and this is happening to people, and they got nobody to talk to.
It's called Amrita.
There you go.
So,
the female ejaculate is called Amrita.
But that's who Miriam was. And then Miriam got whacked with a white powder. Well, was it leprosy or was it snow? The male scholars say it was leprosy. That's all we know. That's a white substance on the skin. But being Canadian, I know what snow is. The female scholar, I can't remember her name, but she said that teretz in Hebrew means snow.
Oh.
So you have this whole story going on. The point of the story is that these women, once they stand up to Yahweh, they get it. Asherah got it. The wife was Ninmah. She was kicked out of Israel. Miriam was kicked out. Eve was saddled with this web of debt. And it's peaking now. The debt's peaking now to the point that we can't sustain it anymore.
Right.
So now we're watching to see what Trump's going to do, because they come back to Canada and they're all going Trump. I'm saying, well, I'll tell you one thing. The U.S. has nothing going on financially. All the industry left. All they have is go shopping. After 9/11, what did Bush say? Go shopping. Are you kidding me? Is this the Gong Show? What are you talking? Go shopping? They're all lying dead in New York, and the planes are going crazy, and the planes are building this Pentagon. We're going to go shopping now? Because they got nothing.
Sure.
They got nothing.
It'll feed the economy. Go shop.
Go shopping. Canada leads the world. Canada leads the world just ahead of the U.S. in credit card debt. But every man, woman, and child in North America, I found out, and I reported to the court on Thursday, the federal court here, every man, woman, and child in North America, American Canadian, they each owe $96,000. Canada has more household. We have more mortgage debt in Canada, but we have less national debt. The U.S. has higher national debt, less mortgage debt, but both somehow, magically, every human being, even a baby, owes $96,000. We can never pay back. We can't even pay the mortgage back. It takes us 25 years to do that.
What's the solution here? It's monopoly money. It's obvious. It's obvious. It's just some kind of monopoly money. It's just,
But people, but Janet, people will kill for it. People will kill for it. If they're not killing for it, they're working 3 jobs. They're working 3 jobs. They're working 3 jobs to make the payments. Many people in the U.S. are working 3 jobs.
Like France recently explored. Was it the French recently explored a basic minimum needs economy? They were going to give everybody a basic minimum income. There's a couple countries, European countries, basic minimum income, and then everybody would have. You would just have more money on a regular basis to meet their basic needs. And you can even have it allotted for, like in food stamps, you have a fund for housing. If you just stuck all that billions of dollars back into people's pockets and they had to get food or housing and meet their basic needs, it would put all that money back into the economy. And then you'd be able to be creative rather than be in struggle.
Well, let's look at the banks. Let's look at the banks in Iceland. In Michael Moore's movie, Which Country Do We Invade Next? He reports on Iceland where they put the bankers. I think 40 of them went to jail, and those were the ones who were doing the mortgage-backed security genius out of New York. We'll take more bad home loans and we'll use them as security for what's called mortgage-backed securities, and we'll trade those in the stock market, even though it's just bad debt. That's all they're trading. So they all went to jail. The only bank in Iceland in the scandal that was in the black was the one run by the women, and they had invested their money with any company that was making something. As long as you were manufacturing something, they gave them the money, and they were in the black. The rest were all in the red. So when you go back to the woman who's appearing all over the world, she appeared in Lubbock, Texas in 1993, and she warned the United States, "You're going to be broke for not feeding my children." And then she said, "You'll be warned by the fact that Japan will sink first." And they were the strongest economy in the world. And within 2 years, Sony reported that they were bankrupt in Japan, and 2/3 of the banks were in the red. And Japan has never recovered in 25 years. And the U.S. is going down next. Massive bank debt from 2008 was put on the people's back by Obama. First thing he did, and gave T-bills back to the bankers in New York instead of putting them in jail. And now we start the cycle. Then we gave him the Nobel Prize. Then we gave him the Nobel. In the same year, he wins the Nobel Prize.
That I thought was strange.
Well, who put him there? Who put Trump there? Pardon?
That's the Illuminati purpose. The Illuminati purpose is to bankrupt the United States at this time.
They keep moving their head. They keep moving where they're running their businesses. They keep moving the country that's the one that's in charge. We started in Babylon and then Rome and then
Orwell.
Yeah, they keep moving it.
Yes,
so
right now it's in London.
Yeah.
It's in London now, then it's moving now away from Washington. It's moving into Beijing.
Right.
The Bank of Beijing is owned by the Bank of Switzerland, the Basel banks in Switzerland. The Bank of Canada, so the Canadian Bank of Commerce and Scotia Bank and the Bank of Montreal, Canada, they're all owned by Switzerland, by private banks. I go into these banks and I say, "Do you know who owns the bank? Do you know it's a private bank?" "Well, yeah." "Well, who owns it?" "I don't know. I just work here." Holy shit. Holy shit. You have no idea who you're working for. So what happened was Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, celebrated for bringing the Constitution home. Well, we just put it in federal court. Wait a minute, since 82 we have a Constitution? Then why is our Constitution stamped British North America Act? What country has a Constitution from another country?
Wow.
Get rid of it and start again with a bank system with a government like Switzerland. My daughter's boyfriend's from Switzerland. They have cantons there. It's locally controlled little pockets of governments all over Switzerland, where the people are in control of their government that's local. And that's what we're going to have to go back to. Now, what Trump's going to do, who knows what Trump, you just have to watch what Obama did. Never mind all the black and white and change. What the hell changed in 8 years? Remember, change.
Anyway? Change to what?
Nothing changed. Nothing changed.
I don't think change is all that great unless it's something that it's going to benefit humanity, benefit people. But change for the sake of change isn't good.
Well, I'm just saying.
Great. At whose
What
expense? I mean, there's
what has to change is it has to be the banking system. It has to be the banking system.
Right.
But Obama didn't do that. He gave the debt on the American people and gave T-bills, Treasury bills, back to the bonds of the people. So now we get into the debate in court up here about what is this birth bond thing. Well, it has its birth in 1933 when we went off the gold standard. Canada, Germany, and America went off the gold standard at the same time. And now the birth bond. Well, who can write the check on that bond? Swiss Bank or the Lessons in Hawaii? It's your bond. The bond becomes an instrument written to the holder of the bond. The holder in due course is the bank in Switzerland. So when Pierre Trudeau went off the Bank of Canada with zero interest, that built all of Canada for free, no interest, then they went to borrow money from Switzerland. So he borrowed $40 billion, and the interest payment was $400 billion.
Oh my gosh.
That's a fact. From 1974 to 2014, the bill was $400 billion, which is part of our national debt of $1.2 trillion. Oh, Glenn, you're so serious. Dude, where I live, Sasha, Ontario, the province, owes twice the debt of California. And I come home and 40 years later, you want change, Toronto is still the same city. The highways are the same, the subway's the same, everything's the same. Where did you spend $300 billion? Did you go to Florida? And no one and they're all running in debt. And every week you go on, praise the people, pay the bank, pay the credit card. Unbelievable. Canada leads the world in credit card debt.
Okay,
and we lead the world.
What are we going to do about all this? We have all this.
Well, it's obvious a selective boycott would be a great start.
Well, there you go. We've started now. It's called the Miracle Foundation in Toronto. It's named after an Aboriginal ambassador, my client. And so we've started the Miracle Foundation, and inside that foundation is going to be health, the best health supplements in the world, the best health information in the world, and then sort of a new government policy. There's going to be a gold-backed bank in there. When you join the foundation, you get access to all that. You get one share of the gold-backed Aboriginal bank that the people own, one share each. And so now the chief Malay has allegedly the treasure from Chiang Kai-shek through his widow in New York and a lawyer who was there in Manhattan. They died and gave it to him. So he's got these assets there in L.A., but they won't let him on the Aboriginal Register in Washington because then he can become his own bank.
Yeah.
So I may have to go to Washington to get him on the register or find out why he's not on the register. So I'm not sure of American law in that area, but this is what has to happen. And that's just because when you see all those women running around pissed off with Trump, those are the clan grandmothers. Those are the clan mothers of their neighborhoods. They're the leaders. They're looking for a third to go to. It can't be Democrat under Clinton, and it can't be Republican under Trump. 50% of Americans didn't vote. So they're landless. They have no nation. They're looking for the clan mother. If Bruce Lipton's right, they're looking for the clan mother heritage. And I think it's going to come roaring back.
And what will happen when it does?
You'll have banking the way it's supposed to be. It'll be the end of Monsanto. The guy who was just on for the heritage seeds, I'll write to you tomorrow and get that fellow's website. How do you order those heirloom seeds? They predict now that 85% of North Americans have GMO corn in their DNA.
Oh God.
85, and it's like what do you call that in the computer? A virus in the computer.
Yeah.
Well, they intentionally want to. It's the depopulation bomb. They intentionally want to destroy human life. So who's terraforming the planet for their? Who's taking over?
Well, the monocrop is going to be very susceptible to disease and ever weakening plants. If there's not diversity, you have weakening nutrition and health in all the plants.
Right.
That's right.
So they want to kill us all. Who's the they? Is it the Anunnaki? Is it the Greys, the reptilians, the
Well, my theory is that the banks can only control 2 billion people of the planet in the cities. That's all they can get to with the computers. The 5 billion is the same number of Aboriginal people there are in the world. There are 5 billion Aboriginal, and there's 2 billion civilized people, so-called civilized. So you want to slowly have attrition over the next generation of the 5 billion that they can't get control of. And they better go soon, because Ninmah, I think, is on the planet, and she's going to kick some ass. And she's rounding up people, either spiritually talking to them. Once they know who the Black Madonna is, you'll figure out who's talking to you. And then she's calling them and calling them and calling them. And then more and more will come.
Yeah.
You know, many are called, few follow. And of those few, only a handful persevere. But that handful is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Once you're completely ridiculous for reporting that during sex you left your body and came back, people have told me this, and would you tell somebody? I'm crazy. Well, did it happen? Yeah. The start of mental illness is not telling people. What's in your head? Write it down. What's in your head? Write it down. What happened? Write it down. Don't type it in the computer. Write it down pen to hand, pen to paper. Then the brain is capturing it. I read this debate with a lawyer the other day, waiting for court to start. He was from the Netherlands. He said they've shown in studies that typing on the computer is not the same as handwriting. The brain can't pick up the typed word. It can't pick it up. It's coming out of the hand to paper to the brain storage system. I always handwrite my notes. There's a big pile of them up on the night table all the time. That's my record. So they say, Glenn, how do you retain this information in your head? I'm talking tonight off my cuff. Because as you handwrite it down, the brain is storing it. And it's this bigger store. You know, I don't have to go to the computer. I Google some things now, of course, but reliance on Googling, that reliance on Google Maps, nobody knows where the hell to go. Where's south? Where's the west? I don't know. Follow the sun. Oh, yeah, where's the sun? Oh, I never thought of that. Oh, my God.
So let me go. We have a few more minutes. Let's go back. So say that again. Ninmah's calling and what? Say that one more time. I think Ninmah's on the planet now. I was told by somebody about a year ago she's now in Germany. Maybe it was you who told me. Yeah. Well, I'm not.
The feeling is that she's here. She's not happy with Enki or Enlil, Yahweh. They're not letting go of the male-dominated periods. You know, $2,200 years for each god. So Yahweh had his time from 2000 to 0. All that trouble with Moses and Abraham. Then Jesus had his time from 0 to now. Now it's Ninmah's time. It's Mary Magdalene's time. It was in Aquarius. So I don't think she's happy with either one. And she's going to go around to begin to establish her universities, however she does it, all over the world. So the audience is ever out there. Pardon?
Is she divorcing Enki?
I think she's not happy. I don't know. I don't know anything about the divorce. I just know it was in a book called Almina's name. I have to think of her book. In 2008, she got that message that Ninmah is going to bring the white arts out of Lemuria. She buried them in a cave back then, 30,000 BC. So I keep asking my psychic and advanced friends, when I meet friends, do you know about the white arts? You know about the white arts? So they've operated with the black arts so far. Jesus and Enlil used the black arts. I don't know about Ningishita, but he's apparently off the planet. But I think Enki is in Mount Shasta, and I think in Germany, behind the scenes, is Enki, it's Enlil. And if they're here, then I couldn't imagine the Ninma's not here. Or
Right.
she can communicate from Nibiru where she is. Because you know that the woman was emblazoned.
She left. I was tracking down who left and who stayed, and I don't think she left. I think she stayed with Enki. I think this is her planet. You know, this is her people.
And then Bergamara. But Bergamara is the lady of the seventh planet. Bergamara is the mother of Eve, and she has her role in there. I spent too much time on your show talking about Damkina, but she's appearing. I think some of the appearances are her. I think most of them are in appearing. Barbara Marciniak does a really great tape on that. I'll have to figure what the name of it was, but she mentions the
Was it Nima Fatima? This is the 100-year anniversary of Fatima.
Yeah, very good, Jess. Well, I just love your show. And so that's exactly correct. And what Marciniak said was, who is this woman appearing in 1917 who, in the third dimension of free choice, can predict the next 100 years of history? She predicted exactly to Sister Lucy. Exactly what happened. First World War, Second World War, communism 70 years later. And then communism might go underground. Consecrate the world to me, Pope. And he didn't do it. John Paul II consecrated the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus. He screwed it up. And now communism is going everywhere underground through the Chinese money. In briefcases, it's going all over the world underground. Now we got a real problem. Apparently I heard that Trump...
There are still many Mary apparitions and appearances. There's books. I've read some books. I mean, it's not just 100 years ago, but all through to the modern era, people are seeing it like these holographic projections of Mary.
I don't care who it is. Write down what she's saying. Report what she's saying, so we can all compare notes.
Yeah, well, the Beatles already told us, you know, when there's time of troubles, Mother Mary.
I mean, I try to keep it straight. Mary, and there's just lots of references. So she's still doing stuff. So she never left.
Well, I challenge them to put what she's saying down on paper and compare it to anything that Virgin Mary ever said, which ain't too much. I'll let you know. She never said too much in the Bible. She's not really seen anywhere, and Magdalene is. But also put it down when you realize that maybe she's Damkina and the mother of Eve. Now let's have a go and see what she's saying about her children. The far better story that she birthed Eve, and the DNA shows us going back to one woman, Eve. We now know that. It's a much more believable story than a virgin mother born with no sperm. Now everyone's freaking out.
Stories trying to explain DNA manipulation and hybridization, and so that's what when I start with the lost books of the Bible, they're telling stories of how a child gets genetically enhanced. It's a hybrid that's implanted, and then the woman, Mary's mother, in the story of the lost book. Even these stories, you have to look at the stories. We don't know exactly the 100% truth, but these stories of these enhanced births, and we're still getting it from experiencers, people that are being abducted. I have Cynthia Crawford. She's a hybrid, and her father allowed her to be created and then put in her mother's womb beside her twins. We have the ancient stories and the modern stories of this genetic manipulation. We're almost out of time. Glenn, tell us about yourself and your new books. We're out of time here.
Well, the book series is at authorhouse.com, and there's 4 books in the market now. The first is on how to lose weight and maintain it. The second one's on perfect health. The third one's called Sacred Sex and how you find your way to the Stargate. And that book ends up pointing to Mary Magdalene as the artist who created the female and the male. And that leads us into the Black Madonna is the name of the 4th book, and explains the connection to why Black Madonna is Ninma, the Egyptian Isis, and Mary the Magdalene, and how it could all be the same person. And then book 5 is coming out probably in the next month. I just got the final draft from the Author House. and you'll be the first one to get a copy. And that's about the central bank and the Vatican, what it's done. So that people know, the UN now has said that all the Aboriginal suffering, it was January 16 of last year, all the Aboriginal suffering in the world was caused by papal bulls. But we haven't heard that anywhere else. I heard it from the clan grandmother. And it's right there in the United Nations.
Say it again? Caused by who?
All the suffering was caused by the papal bulls. The high edicts of the Pope have caused all. Now, what kind of Pope is this? So there you go. There's the United Nations. Go look it up. And
well, that's Enlil's agent, the Pope, I suppose. Yes.
That's correct. That's correct. The Queen and the Vatican and Leo on one side, and now the Aboriginals on the other. So let's go.
Thank you, Glenn.
All right, thank you.
Stay on at the Sasha Show. Thank you for listening.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.